The film opens with filmmaker Susanna, who is married to Scott Cohen, a successful music industry executive and futurist. She explains her decision to film their life, especially after Scott announces his plan to become a cyborg by implanting a compass in his chest. This device, called the North Sense, will vibrate every time he faces magnetic north, giving him a sixth sense. Susanna admits she is filming as a way to understand his journey, as they are already very different people. Scott believes that while human biology has given us what we need to survive, technology is the next natural step for humanity to evolve. He views the North Sense not as a body modification for external expression, but as a mind modification for a deeply personal experience. He wants to become a part of technology, not just a user of it. The film follows Scott through the piercing process, where two small anchors are inserted into his chest. Despite his initial fear of needles, he endures the process with some nervous humor. Susanna films the experience, which at one point upsets Scott, as he feels she is documenting his vulnerability without his consent. After the anchors heal, Scott attaches the North Sense. He excitedly demonstrates how he can now feel the subtle vibration that constantly indicates where north is. He describes it as a sense that is always on, unlike a tool like a pocket compass. He begins to experience the world differently, remembering rooms and spaces by their cardinal direction. However, the documentary also highlights the challenges this new sense brings to their relationship. Susanna, who prefers a more present sensory life like smelling the sea at the beach, feels increasingly disconnected from Scott's futuristic focus. The North Sense becomes a constant point of friction. Scott's new sense creates a no-go zone on his chest, making it painful to hug him and affecting their physical intimacy. Susanna notes that he is so preoccupied with his new sense that he's become less available for her. She expresses her loneliness and sadness about the loss of physical closeness, and their awkward attempts at hugging reveal the strain on their relationship. The contrast between them is stark. Scott is analytical and focused on a future filled with technology, while Susanna longs for human connection in the present. Scott's lack of nostalgia and emotional expression is also a recurring theme, as seen in his minimal reaction to a photo album Susanna made for his 50th birthday. The film explores the deeper philosophical differences between them. In one conversation, Scott proposes the idea of mind cloning, where he could upload his consciousness to a new form to live longer. Susanna questions how love and human interaction would work without a physical body, but Scott insists that all senses are electrical impulses and can be replicated. He sees the North Sense as only the first baby step on this long journey. This conversation further emphasizes how far apart their worldviews have become. As Scott's North Sense anchors begin to cause pain and rejection, he is forced to remove it for a period of time to let his chest heal. He notes that he feels naked without it and hates walking around without the sense. Susanna buys a physical copy of a book Scott often references, The Singularity is Near, hoping to better understand his perspective. Scott, who prefers digital versions, chastises her for the purchase, which perfectly encapsulates their different approaches to life and technology. The final scenes show Scott and Susanna at the beach, and he reflects on how the North Sense reminds him that he is on the planet, a moment of deep connection that Susanna notes is one of the most profound they have shared. The documentary concludes with Susanna filming Scott as he prepares for a podcast interview, still committed to documenting his life even as she feels they are on two different paths. Scott and Susanna's relationship being tested by his commitment to his cyborg identity. Scott's North Sense anchors are rejecting, causing him pain, and he has to constantly apply tape for support, which he hides from others. Susanna, the documentary's filmmaker, decides to take a film crew to New York to finally reveal Scott's cyborg status to his parents. She sends a dramatic text message to Scott's mother, Nancy, hinting at an emergency to ensure she will answer the phone. The film reveals that Scott's family is culturally Jewish and body modification is taboo in their tradition. Scott admits he is scared of his mother's reaction, anticipating she will say, "Oh, please tell me this is not real." The visit is filled with tension. Nancy and Scott's father are initially confused and concerned. When Susanna bluntly announces Scott is a cyborg, Nancy's reaction is exactly as Scott predicted. She is in disbelief, horrified, and questions if he's insane, while also worrying about the cost. She struggles to understand the purpose of it, repeatedly asking about the benefit and how it contributes to quality of life. Scott's father is more accepting and gets it immediately, which surprises Scott. The conversation is emotionally draining for everyone, especially for Susanna, who later admits to Scott that she got a stomachache from the stress. The documentary shifts focus to Scott's philosophical views. He gives a presentation questioning why humanity invests so much in making technology smarter but not in making humans smarter. He and Susanna also have a conversation about the meaning of life and the desire for immortality. Scott argues that there is no inherent meaning to life and that humans shouldn't want an endpoint to their existence if they can remain healthy in both mind and body. This stark analytical perspective contrasts sharply with Susanna's more emotional and humanistic viewpoint. The documentary also reveals that Scott's original North Sense anchors were removed due to rejection, and he now has a new set in a different position on his chest. He admits he doesn't like this new position as much, finding it weird, but he continues to wear the device. He still twirls to find north, but now only does so when alone, having stopped in front of Susanna after she made fun of him. This detail highlights how the physical manifestation of his new identity is creating a behavioral change, and not always a positive one, in their daily interactions. Susanna's fears about their growing differences are a central theme. She reads more about the singularity and transhumanism, trying to understand Scott's path. She expresses her terror that as he continues down this road, their differences will grow to the point where they can no longer be together. She even considers taking the journey herself, questioning if a shared path is the only way to save their relationship. She contemplates if their problem is unique to cyborgism or a general issue when one person in a couple takes a different path. Seeking to understand this further, Susanna interviews other people who have undergone similar body modifications. She meets Kevin Warwick, a scientist who implanted electrodes into his nervous system and even linked his nervous system to his wife's. Warwick's experience is surprisingly positive and intimate. He describes feeling very close to his wife after the experiment, suggesting that technology can bring people together rather than divide them. This gives Susanna hope that her and Scott's issues might be personal, not inherent to his cyborg nature. Susanna's decision to get her own implant. She travels to Sweden to attend an implantation party, a social gathering where people get implants. She is surprised that the event is more of a casual party than a sterile medical procedure. She watches people get chips implanted in their hands to do things like unlock doors and pay for things. Susanna notes the difference between her own fears and the casual reality of the event. She also meets an old friend's brother who also has a north sense. The man explains he got it because he has no natural sense of direction, and it helped him feel more connected to the world by giving him a better understanding of his place in space. The film ends with a hint that Susanna will also get an implant, signifying her willingness to step into Scott's world in an effort to bridge the growing gap between them. The film concludes by showing the ongoing challenges in Scott and Susanna's relationship, culminating in a surprising shift in her own perspective. The film opens with Susanna in Sweden interviewing a man with a magnet implanted in his finger. She is fascinated by the small subtle power it gives him, but he admits that he often forgets it's even there. This conversation, along with her own observations, leads Susanna to question if the North Sense is truly enhancing Scott's life or simply causing unnecessary complications. The film follows them to Guatemala, where Scott's obsessive need to find Wi-Fi to calibrate his North Sense becomes a point of contention. Susanna notes the absurdity of carrying his laptop through a 4-hour jungle hike just for a few minutes of internet connection. She feels like she is a character in a Black Mirror episode, and that Scott's futuristic pursuits are overshadowing their present-day connection. Scott and Susanna have a raw, honest conversation on their trip. She tells him that his project is a distraction and that their relationship has become a story for him to tell others. He claims he's tired of talking about it, but she counters that he chose this path. Susanna argues that his modifications have fundamentally changed their dynamic, especially their physical intimacy, to which Scott replies that humans adapt. She feels he is unaware of the emotional toll it has taken, and their argument reveals a deep chasm between his focus on data and her need for emotional connection. Scott, however, sees the positive side, pointing out that Susanna herself has become more adventurous and that their relationship has grown stronger despite the challenges. Inspired by her own journey and her desire to understand Scott, Susanna decides to get a magnet implanted in her finger. She attends a surgery party in Sweden, a casual event where people get implants. The surgeon warns her that it will hurt and she is visibly terrified, but she goes through with it with her friend Pell by her side for support. She endures the quick, painful procedure and afterward feels a small sense of pride. When she returns home, she tries to surprise Scott with her new implant. She anticipates his applause, hoping to finally share his world, but his reaction is completely unexpected. He is horrified, accusing her of butchering herself. He says she is no longer the woman he married and that they are now two magnets repelling each other. He explains that his North Sense is for a purpose while hers is a mere stunt. His cruel reaction leaves Susanna stunned and hurt. However, the film then reveals a twist. Susanna quickly becomes underwhelmed by her new magnet. It cannot lift heavy objects, and she realizes it's not the life-changing experience she had hoped for. She decides to have it removed, admitting that she tried it out of curiosity but has no desire to be a pioneer. Scott in turn reveals that he has been without his North Sense. The titanium anchors had rejected again, but he adds that a new unimplanted version is in the works. This revelation leads to a poignant conversation on the beach where Susanna tells him that their relationship has been better since he took the device off. She feels that they have reconnected and that he has paid more attention to her and to them. Scott remains steadfast in his beliefs, arguing that their issues are simply a part of life that they must deal with, not a result of his choices. The documentary ends with Scott introducing his new external North Sense, a necklace-like device that he claims will not interfere with their relationship. Susanna remains skeptical, but the final scene shows her wondering if this new version will still smash on my face constantly during moments of physical intimacy. The film leaves the audience with a sense of uncertainty, suggesting that while the technology may have changed, the fundamental questions about love, connection, and human identity remain unresolved. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.